So you're a beginner photographer and you want to learn some tips to really give you that extra boost. Well, in this video, I'm going to show you the quick tips that I wish I would have known when I first started. What's up, creative crew? Will Simpson here, and welcome to Exploring Photography. Today we're talking photography basics and what you can do as a beginner to give yourself that little extra boost, that little oomph, if you will. Now, this is going to be primarily towards photography beginners, not necessarily the professional. However, there may be a couple of tips in here that you as a professional might find useful. These are the tips and tricks that I would have told myself if I could when I first started. The ones that I was like, you know, these would have really helped me out. So let's get into the first tip. The first one is using the histogram. Now, the histogram is this little meter that shows your exposure, where your exposure is at. If it's too much on the left, it's going to be really dark and underexposed. If it's too much on the right, it's going to be really bright and overexposed. When the graph is kind of centered in the middle, that's proper exposure. Now, the LCD screen in your eyes are not super reliable. I mean, they're pretty good, but they're not perfect because one, your eyes will automatically adjust. They're very good at properly exposing the scene, so to speak. And the LCD screen, well, it's working just on the technology of the camera. So if it's slightly off, then your exposure might be slightly off. By using the histogram, you're able to get proper exposure, because the worst thing that happens is you don't look at the histogram, you take a bunch of photos, you get back into editing and they look totally different and you're like, what? If you take that extra 2 seconds and look at the histogram while you're taking photos, you might see, ooh, they're too bright, or ooh, they're too dark, and adjust, and now you have properly exposed. So when you get back into editing, they are good to go. And the next thing is the EV meter. Now this stands for exposure value. This is very similar to the histogram, but it's that little meter at the bottom of your LCD screen or inside the viewfinder. If you don't see it, press the shutter button just slightly to get focus and it should pop up. This is the little meter that has negatives on the left and positives on the right. The negatives is your underexposed or dark, and your positives are your overexposed or bright. Again, the center, the 0, is properly exposed. Now, I wish I would have known what this meter was when I first started, because you look in the viewfinder and it's right there at the bottom, and you're able to adjust while looking through the viewfinder. It saves so much time. I wish I would have known what it was, because it was there the whole time, but I had no idea what it was, so I didn't even notice it was there. When I learned about it, man, I was like, boom, ooh, underexposed, adjust, take the picture, look over here, boom, take the picture, overexposed now, adjust it, and didn't even look out of the viewfinder. So it is so much faster, and I highly recommend using it, especially when you get to know your settings. It just speeds things up dramatically. That's tip number 1. Use your histogram, use your EV meter to really pinpoint and nail that exposure. Tip number 2, and this one I'm a little cautious to get into. It's kind of a little bit of dangerous territory, because I'm gonna tell you to not use manual mode. Now, I know, you're gonna get a lot of flack from this one, because everyone tells you to use manual mode. You're not a good photographer if you're not using manual mode. What? You're not using manual mode? Oh, you must be totally new. Oh, you can't use manual mode? You'll never be professional. You know, it's kind of a negative in the photography world. However, using it in the beginning can be overwhelming. I know when I first started, I used manual mode and I was just all over the place. You know, you're learning composition, you're learning lighting, you're learning your camera and how to work it. You're learning how to set focus. You're learning how to do all of your settings all at once, and you're just like overwhelmed. There's so much. So by using your aperture priority or AV mode on Canon, or your shutter priority or TV mode on Canon. So on Canon cameras, TV is shutter priority, S is on most other cameras, AV is aperture priority or A on most other cameras. By using those in the beginning, it just removes one little piece that you don't have to worry about. So you can work on composition, you can work on learning your camera and how it works. You can work on lighting without having to really focus on all of your settings and how to adjust them all at the same time, and how to take pictures and how to adjust them when you change locations, and you just get overwhelmed. And so when you first start, totally fine to use aperture priority and shutter priority. I personally recommend using aperture priority because you can really adjust your aperture and really see how it affects your images, and then switch over to shutter priority and see how the shutter affects your images. So you learn what those particular settings do and how they affect your images. Now, I do recommend, once you've learned all of this, once you know your settings, once you are comfortable with your camera, once you're got the basics of lighting, switch to manual mode. Because in the end, manual mode will be the best place to customize your images, to really get exact effects of what you want. So once you've learned it all, and once you know how to do it and you're comfortable with it, definitely switch to manual mode. It's worth it. But until then, feel free to use aperture and shutter priority as much as you want, because in the end, photography is about taking photos. So if you're taking photos and getting good exposure and having less things to worry about, do it, because that is what it's all about. Tip number 3, learn and shoot RAW. Now, I don't need to do too much about this because I did a whole video called RAW versus JPEG, which I will link in the end of this video and in the description. If you're not sure about it, definitely go check that video out after this video. But to give you a brief example, RAW images are much larger and unpre-edited, so to speak. JPEGs are a compressed file that is sort of pre-edited. JPEGs are much easier to use and is pretty much the general file format out there these days of shared photos. RAW has to be converted into JPEG once edited, but are much larger and give you so much more editing ability. It is one thing that start from the beginning so you don't get used to using JPEGs and just shoot RAW. Consider this, you wouldn't give a painter a paint by numbers book. You would give them a blank canvas. So a RAW image is your blank canvas, a JPEG is your paint by numbers. It kind of tells you what you can do with this image. So which one would you prefer? They are your images when you want to do what you want to do with them. So make sure you're shooting RAW over JPEG from the beginning. And if you're not familiar with RAW images, definitely go watch my video, RAW versus JPEG. If you're familiar with RAW, then you should already be shooting RAW. And if you're not, shame on you, shame. Okay, tip number 4, don't be lazy. What do I mean by this? Well, I mean move. Move things, move you, move your body, move the camera, move. Don't be lazy and just snap a photo and be like, that's good enough, because that is not good enough. Sometimes it will be, but if you want really great photos, you're gonna have to move. This has multiple applications. So let's say you take a photo and you look at the frame and you're like, oh crap, I left a cup in the frame. Well, take 2 seconds, move the cup out of frame, take the picture again. Prevents from editing. Or let's say you're taking a picture of someone or of yourself and you happen to have left the sunglasses on the top of your head and you're like, well, that's no good. Good, take the 2 seconds, take the sunglasses off the top of your head and take the photo again. Don't be lazy, because if you rely on editing, you're gonna spend so much extra time editing those out, and they're not gonna look near as good as if you just took the 2 items and moved them out of frame. In addition, move yourself. I always recommend to beginners and people who are learning to get a prime lens, like an 85 prime or a 50 prime. Now, what are prime lenses? These are lenses that are a fixed focal length. This is a 50mm prime. It cannot do any other focal length. 50, 50. No zoom. 85, it's stuck at 85. But what it requires you to do is move yourself, move the body. That allows you to learn better composition, learn what looks good, learn what looks bad, and it doesn't get you reliant on zoom lenses where you can just, oh, 85, I need 200 to zoom in, and there we go. These require you to move and learn as a photographer rather than relying. Plus, let me tell you, prime lenses, they are so sharp and crisp, and usually they have a lower f-stop than a zoom lens. But that's not really the point of getting these. It requires you to, again, move. Get lower, get higher, move left, move right, move in weird, awkward angles. You've seen it, photographer yoga. It's a thing, but it does make a big difference, and it makes you a better photographer. If you started in photography with a prime lens and that was the only thing you used, by the time you upgraded, man, you'd be taking some amazing photos just by that. And you'd see things in different ways than other photographers that just relied on zoom lenses. So another key point, really important, do that. So here's a fun exercise. Next time you do a photo shoot, or the next photo shoots that you do, go through each image and look at the ones that you like, you know, and decide, okay, what could I have done to make this photo better? Are there things in the photo I could have removed? Could I have moved myself? Would this have looked better at a lower angle, higher angle, side angle, right angle, backwards angle? Or is there something that I could have moved that I didn't, that I now have to edit? I bet you anything, if you're a beginner, or even if I still do it, to be honest, like all the time. It's pretty bad, actually. Do that and you'll get better and better. And here's the thing, once you start doing this as a practice, you'll start noticing it. You'll go to take a picture and you'll be like, ooh, we need to move that really quick. Move it out of the frame. And it just becomes faster and faster, and your pictures will go from here to all the way up here. So good job already. Now, tip number 5, and this is a very important one. I was very, very good at this when I first started. When I first picked up a camera, I was addicted. I wanted to take photos of everything. I was just like, everything. I had so many photos. There was a lot of photos. But it is key. As I got, better and better, it kind of slowed down. But this is a key thing. Take tons of photos. Especially in times of digital photography, you don't have to worry about wasting any film. You can take thousands of photos and they can all be garbage. You can just trash them. And don't be afraid of a bad photo. That is kind of an interesting thing. A lot of people, they're like, oh, I don't want to do that shoot because I'm afraid of messing up. Well, don't be afraid of bad photos, because that's how you learn. I would probably say that you learn more from bad photos than good photos, because you're learning what not to do, and the next time you just don't do it and your photos get better and better and better. You learn what doesn't look good, what does look good, what could be added, what couldn't be added. You just learn so much from taking bad photos. This even rolls over into editing. It's okay to do bad edits, because again, you learn how to edit. Most photographers, when they first start, are very, very good at over editing. But to them, it's so new and exciting, and the colors are so vibrant, and ooh man, I love me some vibrant colors. When I first started editing, I was bad at it. But you learn, and it's something you have to go through, and it's totally fine. So it's okay to do bad photos, and it's okay to do bad editing, because you learn what not to do. Every day, go spend 30 minutes taking photos. Take photos of flowers, take photos of your brother, your sister, your mother, your father, your uncle, the cat, the dog, the fish. It doesn't matter. Just go take photos. Spend 30 minutes taking photos, trying from different angles. Use the move tip and move around. Take a photo of a flower from 18 different points of view and see which one looks better. But doing this little exercise every day will just explode your skill and your ability to compose and look at photos, because you have all of this experience already. Do this for like a week and a half and you're gonna be taking freaking fire photos so quickly. And those are my 5 tips for beginner photographers. Now, these aren't the make or break tips for the photography game, but just like any other art, it does take time. You learn a little here, you practice a little there, you learn a little more here, and you practice a little more there, and then suddenly you're a famous photographer and you're not even sure how that happened. But a little bit of time, baby steps, just a little at a time. Now, a little bonus tip, and this is a tip that I learned from a photographer friend of mine, Serge Ramelli, and I loved this tip. I call it the 10-minute rule. And what it says is you need to practice or work or study or observe or learn or educate yourself 10 minutes a day, at least 10 minutes a day on something you love. So let's take photography. Spend 10 minutes a day, at least 10 minutes a day. And after 1 year, 2 years, 10 years, suddenly you've been doing this for 10 years and you know so much. And personally, I find it easier to do 10 minutes a day than 2 hours a day, because realistically it's something you love. So that 10 minutes a day is gonna turn into 30 minutes a day to an hour to 2 hours. But it's just that rule of applying at least 10 minutes a day. Whether you schedule the time each day or not, just make sure to work on something at least 10 minutes a day. Something you love, something you have passion for, and you will learn a lot faster. So just remember the 10-minute rule, give it a try, start doing it every day, and you'll see. Oh, you'll see. It's awesome. And that's all I have for you in this video. So hit the like button if you liked it. Subscribe if you haven't already. Let me know in the comments if you have any other great tips that'll really help beginners, because this is a nice community, you know. We got a good group, guys, so let's help each other. You know, if you want more tips and tricks after this video, scroll down to the comments and hopefully people are leaving other tips and tricks that will greatly help you improve as a beginner. But I will see you guys in the next video. By the way, you guys, this is Brew. Figure you could meet her. She's a German Shepherd. Oh.